The fire coughed once and nearly went out. A thin ribbon of smoke sagged toward the stone floor, heavy and sour, carrying the smell of embers that had burned too long without feeding. In the dark, that sound was enough. Koruk's eyes opened before his body moved. He lay still, listening, not to danger, but to absence. The fire no longer spoke the way it should. He rolled onto one elbow. The cave was vast and low, its ceiling lost in shadow. Soot layered the stone like old skin. Along the walls, bodies rested in familiar shapes, wide backs, thick necks, limbs folded inward to keep heat. Breath rose and fell in uneven rhythm. Somewhere deeper, an elder exhaled with a wet rasp, then settled again. Koruk rose silently. Bare feet met cold stone. The night pressed through the cave mouth, a living cold that crept along the ground. Hides hung across the entrance, stiff with frost, barely moving. Outside, the valley was still sealed in darkness, the kind that came before dawn, but did not promise it. He crouched at the hearth. The fire was shrinking inward, embers dulling from orange to a tired red. Koruk fed it dry moss, then thin splinters of wood kept aside for this exact moment. He leaned close and breathed gently, steady and controlled. Ash lifted, stung his eyes. A spark caught, then another. The fire answered. Light returned in pulses, touching stone, bone, hide. Shadows climbed the walls and settled. Behind him, something shifted. Bragg was awake. The leader did not speak. He never did at this hour. He sat upright slowly, joints stiff, eyes already sharp. His hair was thick and dark, with veins of grey, his shoulders heavy with old strength. Scars crossed his chest and arms, marks of animals that had not died easily. He watched Koruk for a long moment. Koruk finished feeding the fire and leaned back on his heels. He did not look up right away. When he did, Bragg gave a single low grunt. Neither approval nor warning, just acknowledgement. Fire lived because someone had seen it fade. Others began to stir. A woman near the wall pulled a hide ire over a sleeping child. Another reached out blindly, fingers brushing the stone until they found a bundle of dried meat hanging from a peg. The elder coughed once more, then traced a line in the dirt with a finger, counting something only she understood. Morning began without words. They ate what remained from the day before, meat torn into strips, tough and cold. Hands passed food without hesitation. No one took more than they needed. Bragg ate last, chewing slowly, eyes never fully closing. When he stood, the hunters rose with him. Stone points were checked by touch more than sight. Thumbs pressed edges, feeling for chips. Wooden shafts were warmed briefly over the fire, turned to harden them. Bone tools knocked softly together, sorted, tied, tucked away. There was no discussion of where they would go. The valley decided that. Koruk watched everything. He was young, but not untested. His body was thick with muscle earned through carrying, dragging, holding. What he lacked was years. He copied how Bragg flexed a spear once, only once, to feel its strength. He watched another hunter tighten sinew using teeth and wrist together. Those things were not taught with sound. They were learned by seeing and surviving. Bragg moved among them, adjusting grips, replacing a cracked point with a better one. When he stopped in front of Koruk, he took the young man's spear, weighed it in his hand, then returned it with a short nod. Koruk felt his chest tighten. He lowered his gaze briefly, then straightened. The women prepared the cave. They banked the fire carefully, covering embers with ash so it would live while they were gone. Meat was checked and moved higher, away from cold-loving animals. A woman sharpened a scraper, while her child watched, copying the motion with a useless stone. The elder tapped her stick against the floor twice, a warning. Weather would shift. At the entrance, Bragg lifted his hand. The hunters stepped into the cold. The valley opened before them, wide, pale, unforgiving. Snow crusted the ground in sharp sheets that cut skin when broken. Mountains rose on either side, dark and heavy, their peaks swallowed by low cloud. Every breath burned. They moved downhill in single file, spacing themselves without thought. Korak took the rear, watching their tracks even as he made them. Today would be close. It always was. Spears were for bodies, not distance. Behind them, the cave swallowed its warmth and waited. The valley tightened as they descended. Snow gave way to broken earth where wind had stripped the ground bare. Korak felt the change through his feet first. Cold stone, then damp soil, then frost again. Each texture told him where sound would carry and where it would die. He kept his breathing slow, matching the pace of the hunter ahead of him. Bragg raised his fist. The line stopped, as if the ground itself had seized them. No one shifted weight. No one turned their head. The wind slid past their bodies and went on. Bragg crouched. He brushed snow aside with the back of his hand. Beneath it, the earth was churned and dark, still wet at the edges. He pressed 2 fingers into it, then brought them to his nose. Fresh, heavy, careless. He lifted 2 fingers, large. Then he angled his hand toward a cluster of bent pines farther downslope. The hunters separated without sound. Each man moved into a place shaped by long memory rather than choice. Korak swung wide, stepping carefully to keep the wind on his face. His fingers tightened around the spear shaft. The cold no longer mattered. His body had shifted into something older and quieter. Between the trees, something breathed. A low snort, the scrape of hoof against frozen ground. The animal stood broadside, head down, tearing at snow to reach dead grass beneath. A bison, old, thick-necked, its coat clotted with ice and dirt. Steam rolled from its nostrils. One horn was chipped near the tip, broken long ago. It was alone. Bragg's hand dropped. They rushed. Snow cracked underfoot as they closed the distance. The bison jerked its head up, eyes wide and white, muscles bunching as it tried to turn. There was no space. The hunters were already there. A spear struck its flank, biting deep. Another glanced off bone with a dull crack. The bison bellowed, a sound that tore through the valley and came back weaker, broken by stone. Korak ran hard, narrowing the world to the space between his chest and the animal's side. He drove his spear forward with both hands. The impact jarred his shoulders and sent pain up his arms, but the point held. The shaft flexed, then steadied. The bison surged sideways. Korak stumbled, boots skidding on frost, but he did not let go. He leaned his weight into the spear, teeth clenched, breath forced from his chest. Others were there now, striking again and again, close enough to smell the animal's sweat and fear. Blood spilled onto the snow, steaming. The bison's legs buckled. It dropped heavily, the ground shuddering beneath it. One last breath rattled from its chest, then stopped. Silence returned, thick and immediate. No one moved for a moment. They watched the body, waiting. Bragg approached last. He placed his palm against the bison's side, feeling for any rise. There was none. He withdrew his hand and nodded once. The work began at once. Stone blades flashed in practiced rhythm. Hide was opened, peeled back, while warmth still held. Organs were removed carefully, set aside. Meat was cut free in heavy slabs, laid onto hides spread across the ground. Koruk's hands grew slick and numb, fingers stiffening as blood cooled, but he did not slow. Nothing was wasted. When the work was done, they bound the meat with sinew and rope. Loads were lifted, shoulders dipping under the weight. The sun had shifted, pale light sliding between clouds. The valley looked unchanged, as if nothing had happened at all. The return was slower. Each step pressed burden into muscle and bone. Breath came heavier now, steaming thick in the cold air. Koruk adjusted his load twice, ignoring the burn in his arms. He kept his eyes moving, scanning ahead and behind, alert even as exhaustion crept in. The cave appeared as a dark cut in stone. Those inside heard them before they saw them. The rhythm of steps had changed. Children emerged first, then women. No cries, no rush, just movement toward need. The meat was laid out inside the cave, steam filling the space with a thick iron smell that clung to the throat. Hands reached, sorted, lifted. Bragg directed with gestures, his voice a low sound used only when something went wrong. Koruk lowered his load and stepped back. His arms trembled. A woman pressed a strip of fresh meat into his hand without looking at him. He ate where he stood, chewing slowly, feeling warmth spread through his chest and down into his limbs. As evening gathered, the cave settled. Fat sizzled on hot stone. Children gnawed bones, laughter sharp and brief. The elder hummed, a sound barely shaped, older than words. Bragg sat near the fire, repairing a cracked spear shaft, his movements steady and unhurried. Koruk sat across from him, watching. When Bragg finished, he tossed the spear toward Koruk. The young hunter caught it instinctively, hands closing around familiar weight. Bragg met his eyes, a single grunt. The fire burned steady. Night claimed the valley quickly. Outside the cave, wind returned in low, testing waves, sliding along stone, and then pulling away. The hides at the entrance stirred and settled. Inside, the fire held its shape, flames folding inward, patient and controlled. Smoke rose and spread across the ceiling, joining layers laid down by years of other nights. After eating, no one rested immediately. Hands stayed busy. Stone blades were scraped clean of fat and blood, edges renewed with careful strikes. Hides were stretched across frames of wood and bone, weighted so they would not curl as they dried. Meat was cut thinner now, arranged where smoke would reach it slowly. Preservation was as important as the hunt itself. Koruk worked beside two older hunters, copying their pace. When his blade slipped, one of them corrected his grip with a short push of fingers against wrist. No sound followed. The lesson was complete. Nearby, children were given small tasks, carrying sinew, fetching sticks, holding a hide-edged tort. When their attention wandered, they were not scolded. They would learn by being there. The elder sat near the back wall, spine bent, eyes half closed. From time to time, she drew lines in the dirt with her stick, then erased them with her foot. The marks meant nothing to Koruk, but he knew they mattered. She remembered things no one else did. As the fire burned lower, Bragg stood. The cave quieted without effort. He did not speak. He walked the space slowly, eyes moving from fire to meat to people. He pressed a hide down, where cold crept in. He nudged a bone peg deeper into stone. When he was done, he returned to his place near the hearth and sat. Only then did the day loosen its grip. Breathing slowed. Bodies leaned into the ground and into one another. A child startled awake, then settled again, when a hand rested on their back. Somewhere near the entrance, a hunter fed the fire using his foot, never opening his eyes. Koruk lay on his side, spear beside him, the shaft warm, where it had rested near the flames. His muscles hummed with dull ache, a deep, satisfying weight that pulled at his limbs. He stared upward, following the slow movement of shadows across the ceiling. This place was known. Every dip in the stone, every draught of air, the smell of smoke embedded in hide and hair. It was not comfort in the way softness was comfort. It was certainty. Outside, a distant howl cut through the night. It rose once, then broke apart, unanswered. No one in the cave moved. Walls were thick. Fire was strong. The sound faded into the valley. Time passed without shape. Koruk's thoughts drifted, not forward, not backward, but inward. The feel of the spear striking flesh. The resistance of muscle. The moment when the animal's strength had given way. These were not memories to dwell on. They were measures, stored and quiet. A soft murmur across the cave. The elder's voice, barely formed. A sound more than a word. It did not carry meaning so much as presence. The fire answered with a low crackle. Koruk's eyes closed. Sleep came in pieces at first. A shift, a breath, then deeper. The fire sank toward embers again, glowing red beneath a thin layer of ash. It did not die. It waited. Before dawn, Koruk woke once more. He did not rise. He listened. The cave breathed around him, slow, steady, whole. Bragg slept nearby, one hand resting on the ground, as if feeling for it even in rest. Children lay tangled together, faces pressed into fur and hide. The elder's breathing was shallow but even. Nothing demanded action. The night was nearly done. Koruk closed his eyes again, letting the warmth hold him. Morning would come as it always did, not with words, not with ceremony, but with movement. For now, the cave remained still. The fire thinned to a low, steady glow. Its light no longer climbed the walls. It rested close to the ground, contained, sufficient. Ash settled over embers, like a skin forming, holding warmth beneath. No one moved to change it. Not yet. The cave slept. Breath moved through the space in uneven layers, deep and slow from the hunters, lighter and quick from children, shallow and measured from the elder near the back wall. Bodies leaned into one another, sharing heat without thought or permission. The stone beneath them held the cold at bay, as it always had. Koruk woke briefly as the wind shifted. It slid past the entrance hides, tugged once, then moved on. He felt it across his face, thin and sharp, then gone. His eyes opened just enough to take in the dim red glow of the hearth, the familiar shapes of those around him. Everything was as it should be. He did not rise. Near the fire, Bragg shifted in his sleep. One hand touched the ground, fingers spreading as if confirming its presence. His breathing remained slow. Even at rest, the weight of the cave seemed to settle around him, shaped by his knowing. Nothing waited beyond this night. There was no sense of ending or beginning, only continuation. The fire would need feeding. The hides would need turning. The meat would need watching. Children would wake hungry. The valley would decide what came next. But not now. Now, the cave held its silence. Smoke clung to stone. Ash settled. The elder exhaled, paused, then breathed again. Somewhere deeper in the dark, water dripped from stone to stone, marking time without counting it. Koruk's thoughts faded. Strength rested in his limbs, ready but unneeded. The hunt was done. The day had closed in on itself, complete. Nothing pressed at the edges, demanding more. The embers dimmed further, still alive beneath their cover. Heat lingered. The cave remained warm enough, safe enough. Outside, the valley lay under cloud and cold, unchanged by the passing of one day among many. Inside, bodies slept, bound together not by words, but by shared work and shared need. Morning would come, it always did, for now the fire waited, the cave breathed, and the night held them all.